Good morning. My colleagues who have served on the Joint Select Committee to consider and report on the Constitutional Amendment Self-Government Bill 2020. Senator Jerlyn John and Member of Parliament for Chaguanas West, Dinesh Rambali, members of the media who are listening to us via their respective social media platforms and so on, TV Jagrati, and Trinidad and Tobago. Good morning to all as we embark on another of our Sunday morning weekly press conferences on behalf of the Leader of the Opposition and the United National Congress. Today, we move to provide an insight to the people of Trinidad and Tobago on this very important and critical report, which will be debated in the House of Representatives this coming Monday, which is tomorrow at 10:30 a.m. when the House will be called to order. Those of you who are looking on may be able to appreciate that this journey of self-determination and autonomy for Tobago did not begin in 2021. The torch for self-autonomy or movement was lit in the very said Parliament where we will debate the Joint Select Committee's report when Member of Parliament at that time, Arthur Napoleon Raymond Robinson, filed his motion after a regional Congress of the Democratic Action Congress, the DAC, which was held on the 26th of November 1976 at Caribana Clubhouse in Scarborough. That Congress authorized the two Tobago members of Parliament, in addition to MP Robinson, Dr. Winston Murray, to introduce a motion in Parliament at the earliest opportunity and to take all other and proper and necessary steps to achieve internal self-government for Tobago in 1977. Tobago and Trinidad, and this morning I will quote from this motion, which was piloted by Member of Parliament Robinson on the 14th of January 1977. And it goes on to say, and if you would permit me this morning to quote from this contribution, the purpose of this motion is to place a substantial part of the responsibility for the conduct of Tobago's affairs fairly and squarely where that responsibility belongs. That is to say, in the hands of the residents of Tobago themselves. This is not secession, this is not sedition or separation. It is rather a matter of historical justice. It is consistent with the contemporary notions of human rights, and it accords with realism. The purpose of the motion is to enable the people of Tobago to discharge their responsibilities to themselves and to the people of Trinidad in a united Trinidad and Tobago. What the motion seeks is a more just, a more realistic, and consequently a more lasting basis of unity between the people of the two islands of Trinidad and Tobago. And he went on to say, I end by emphasizing that whatever the fate of this motion, whether the honorable members oppose it or accept it, internal self-government for Tobago is on the national agenda from today, and it would continue to be on the national agenda until, with the help of Almighty God, justice and internal self-government are brought to the people of the island of Tobago. End of quote. And as I said, this motion was seconded by Member of Parliament at the time, Dr. Winston Murray. Ladies and gentlemen, the facts are glaring. The PNM has been in political power for more than 46 years between 1956 to 2021. Today, we in the opposition must ask, what has the People's National Movement done to advance the cause of self-government and self-determination on behalf of the people of Tobago? What has Prime Minister Dr. Keith Rowley and the PNM achieved for the people of Tobago in the last 6 years? Today, we want to place on the record that the United National Congress has always been in support of self-determination for the people of Tobago. And when we go to the Parliament tomorrow at 10:30 a.m. in the morning and the debate begins, the United National Congress will continue to be prepared to listen and work with the government if the government is prepared to work in the interest of the people of Tobago. And this leads me to the further points that we have to put very squarely to you here this morning, that it is the opposition's view that Prime Minister Dr. Keith Rowley is attempting to bully the people of Tobago in accepting his model of self-governance, or what is called self-determination, because Prime Minister Dr. Keith Rowley wants to create a narrative that the opposition must be spoken to as it relates to the well-being and the welfare of the people of Tobago. And the opposition will be the obstructionist. The opposition will be standing in the way of self-determination and the continued journey for self-autonomy. But it is important for us to put on the records, because we are of the opinion, and the records are there, that this is PNM's raw deal for Tobago. And in fact, only Prime Minister Dr. Keith Rowley, his 19 members, not 19, but his 21 members of Parliament, the Chief Secretary, and the political leader with responsibility for Tobago affairs within the framework of the People's National Movement, Tracy Celestine Davidson, and the assemblymen of the PNM are in support of the report and are in support of the proposed bills. And this is further exemplified by what key Tobagonians have to say on the draft autonomy bills and the report. Farley Davidson, the deputy political leader of the Progressive Democratic Patriots, indicated that the bills are incomplete and are deliberately left that way. It is a great situational irony that bills to grant the right to self-determination and equality of status with Trinidad in so many ways ignore the desires of the people of Tobago. Ho Choi Charles, former Chief Secretary and Chairman of One Tobago Voice, the entire bill must be rejected by the people of Tobago, having regard to the conversation we are having. There is no structure in the bill. Dr. Winford James, political analyst, the bills are a reversal of many good autonomy ideas from 2016 and earlier. I stand resolutely against them. Dr. Vanas James, mathematical economist, these bills fail to deliver to Tobago the promised equality of status or self-determination and should be rejected on that basis alone. However, they also include provisions that will effectively make Tobago a colony of Trinidad and severely damage the economic diversification and development prospects of the country. Stanley Beard, former THA secretary and member of unaligned Tobago politicians. These bills will not advance the cause and needs of Tobagonians. Tobagonians must be responsible for charting a course and pace of development on the island. Shirley Cook, Vice President, Crown Point Business Association. The provision in the bills do not reflect the right to self-determination and equality of status as listed in the amended Constitution. The period allowed for Tobagonians to adequately peruse and consult on the Joint Select Committee proposal is insufficient. Deborah Moore McGinn, former Assemblyman and only independent candidate to ever win a seat in the THA election. These bills are contradictory within themselves and are inconsistent in several respects with what Tobago people have expressly said and what they want and should be withdrawn. They take us back to before 1996 and are totally unacceptable. So it is very clear, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, that 99% of the population of Tobago is against the proposed bill, and the population of Trinidad has not been consulted on the proposed bills in a manner that will reflect the will of the people and what democracy is about. And it is our position that these two bills that have been proposed within the Joint Select Committee's report do not reflect the broadest possible engagement of citizens in Tobago and citizens in Trinidad and Tobago. And it is very clear that the dreams for Tobagonians for self-government are continuously being abused by the PNM, and it is being politically manipulated. It is only when elections are near we see the PNM masquerading as the champions for the cause of Tobago self-autonomy. This is not, and I want to re-emphasize this point, this is not in pursuit of equality of status or self-determination or equality of partners or equality of access. It is simply a political agenda in pursuit of a political agenda on behalf of Prime Minister Dr. Keith Rowley and the People's National Movement. They have alienated Tobago by creating mistrust between Tobagonians and the rest of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago, abusing the hopes of the Tobagonian dream of self-government. Since coming into government, Dr. Keith Rowley has been the fourth Prime Minister, PNM Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago, and he is rampaging our democracy, as I said, for his own selfish political interests. Dr. Rowley understands that his political future is hinged upon the outcome of the upcoming THA elections, as a failure to win the upcoming elections would be a stinging slap against his political stock on the island and PNM's political stock nationally. At the THA elections earlier on this year, Dr. Rowley lost 4 of the 10 seats it held in the THA, and the PNM held on to 1 seat by the hem of a dress. Dr. Rowley's attempt to force these 2 new bills and the report down the throats of the people of Tobago is nothing short of what we would call sinful. What is worst, while the PNM is attempting to cry victory over its mischievous, weak, illogical, and biased consultation process in Tobago, we are yet to hear from the critical stakeholders in Trinidad on the versions of the bill which has been proposed by the People's National Movement. We see how Dr. Rowley has treated the people of Tobago and has mismanagement the cause of Tobago self-government. I see hate, I see bitterness, I see acrimony, I see animosity, and I see a process that was completely out of control in terms of engagement. Dr. Keith Rowley is afraid of widespread consultation because he's afraid that he will be opposed by the people of Tobago and Trinidad, and the minute you oppose him, the Prime Minister gets very angry, and if you oppose him strongly, he becomes a raging bull. In 2007, former Chief Secretary Orville London began a process of consultations with the people of Tobago to determine their views on the issue of self-government. In 2012, the Orville London administration and consultative process sent its draft bill for self-governance to the cabinet, which was controlled by the People's Partnership, of which the UNC was a part of. Today, after Orville London served a bridge between the people of Tobago and the cabinet, he served as the Chief Secretary of Tobago. He was the political leader in Tobago from a PNM's point of view. The London Bridge has fallen, as has the London Bill. The PNM, the Prime Minister's son of Tobago, is kissing Tobago on one hand, but stabbing Tobago in the back with another for his painful, irreverent, self-serving, and sly betrayal. Their dream of wholesome self-government, Dr. Keith Rowley is the Judas of all Judases. And I have to ask the question to Dr. Rowley and the PNM, where is the THA bill of 2016 and where is the THA bill or the Tobago Forum of Parties bill that they laid in the House in 2018 that went to a joint select committee? And one of the major lies that they will come and peddle to you is that the PNM, they will peddle, is that the United National Congress is not supportive of the people of Tobago. The United National Congress hates Tobago, and the people of Tobago must be afraid and mistrusting of anything that is linked to the United National Congress. This is the furthest from the truth. It was in 1995 that the United National Congress formed government, and we did so through an alliance with then Arthur Napoleon Rayburn Robinson and the people of Tobago under Prime Minister Basdev Pandey. We embraced and worked alongside with Tobago greats such as Pamela Nicholson and the late Dr. Morgan Job in our cabinet. It was UNC that appointed the first Tobagonian president in the person of Arthur Napoleon Raymond Robinson. It was the UNC that finished the Scarborough Hospital in 2012 after the PNM left it languishing, eaten by cost overruns. It was the UNC that opened a Costard campus in 2013 for the young people of Tobago to further their skills without having the headache of having an option, no other option, but to study in Trinidad. For years, there was no opportunity for tertiary level training and education in Tobago, and we made this possible also through the Metal Industries Company Limited, MIC, and developed a campus for labor studies through the Cipriani College of Labor and Cooperative Studies. So distinguished, and in addition to that, it was the UNC again which went back into government in a coalition along the people of Tobago in 2010 and provided 5 years of revolutionary delivery. And it was the UNC that built the Dwight York Stadium in Tobago, and it was the UNC that took the Tobago Constitutional Amendment Bill to Parliament in 2013. And it was the UNC that kept a smoothly running sea bridge between Trinidad and Tobago. And if you compare this to the track record of the PNM, it was one of Dr. Keith Rowley's. This is in stark contrast to Tobago, which is outshone because Tobago's political bitterness to his motherland has been clearly exemplified when we see that he has been mamagaing the people of Tobago with the purchase of ferries when it is he and the PNM that destroyed the sea bridge to Tobago and had the state of Tobago's economy in a collapse for over 2 years. It was Prime Minister Dr. Keith Rowley who promised Tobago sandals and promised employment, promised investment and opportunities. And today he has failed to deliver a single international brand to the people of Tobago. It was Prime Minister Dr. Keith Rowley who used taxpayers' funds to construct a $32 million residence for him to use while Tobagonians were losing their homes, losing businesses, and going unemployed. It was Prime Minister Dr. Keith Rowley who offered $50 million to Tobago hoteliers for repairs, but he failed to manage the COVID-19 crisis, failed to vaccinate early and aggressively, and to return economic activity and tourism to profitable levels on the island. So in conclusion, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, Keith Rowley, Prime Minister, is the Judases of all Judases, backstabbing the people of Tobago, attempting to bully and bulldoze into accepting 2 bills, which was done without the wholesome input of the stakeholders in this island. And these 2 unilateral bills are a dagger to the heart of democracy. And in this regard, I will now hand over to my colleagues, MP Dinesh Rambali, who will be followed by Senator Jolene John, who will go into some very critical issues as it relates to this Joint Select Committee's report, which will be debated, as I said, tomorrow, Monday, at 10:30 in the House of Representatives, and following their respective presentations, we will field questions from members of the media. I thank you.
Thank you, Member of Parliament for Couva South, my colleague MP Rujanath Inder Singh, my other parliamentary colleague, Deputy Political Leader of the United National Congress, Senator the Honorable Ms. Jolene John. To all of you citizens who are tuned in this morning to our coverage of our press conference, and of course to all those media personnel who have joined us this morning. So good morning to all. This is a very important press conference. And whilst we hold press conferences every Sunday for the purpose of making sure that we bring the issues to the people, this morning's one is very important, and it is critical because we are dealing with our twin island republic relations, the movement forward in terms of governance. And this morning we have heard from MP for Couva South, MP Inder Singh. He has given us a good historical breakdown of all the efforts that have been made by leaders before, by politicians before, by the people of Tobago and the people of Trinidad in moving forward with Tobago self-government. I want to say that in my presentation this morning, I would like to basically give insight and some of the reasons for which members here this morning, Ms. John, MP Inder Singh, and myself, why we felt the need to write a minority report and hence once you look at the bill that has been laid in the Parliament, or I should say the report rather, from the Joint Select Committee, you will see that there's a minority report emanating from the three of us, and there's a reason for that. I want to say at the outset that we fully support the idea and the movement for Tobago self-government. We fully support the people of Tobago in forging ahead, working very diligently, and seeking out what they deem to be the status which they would like to achieve and the relations they would like to accomplish with the people of Trinidad. I also want to say that we also support the people of Trinidad, because in dealing with a Twin Island Republic, we are in essence dealing with two peoples, the relations of the two peoples, and everything that goes with the governance between both islands. So in our report, we have made this crystal clear that we support Tobago self-government and a movement in that direction. However, I want to make it categorically clear this morning, what we do not support is this present PNM's manipulation of Tobago self-government. So I want to say that at the outset. So we have heard from MP Inder Singh before, where he has spoken about this self-governance movement stemming back from 1977 with the then A.N.R. Robinson, who would have been Member of Parliament and held the seat of Tobago East, and moving a motion in the Parliament as early as 1977. And Tobago self-governance continues to be a burning issue for all Tobagonians, and we say rightly so. And we have tried to capture the mood of what we have picked up from Tobagonians in our minority report. In our minority report, and I do have a hard copy which was given to the Parliament itself, we have attached our correspondence with the committee, and whilst I will not delve into speaking about the deliberations of the committee, we are certainly entitled to speak about the reasons for what we have produced in the minority report. Now, the entire country deserves to be educated on this movement for self-government. Many crucial issues emanate from self-government for Tobago. People need to understand the different models of power sharing. They have to understand what those models may entail, whether it will be a competitive, model sharing between both islands, whether it will be mutually agreeable, whether it is something that it may be collaborative. But this is something that we must have a proper discussion with respect to. And this is a point which we have made in our minority report. I would like to say as well that in that history that MP Inder Singh referred to, that have come to date in terms of all the discussions, all the consultations, the reports, the motions that were brought to the parliamentary houses relating to Tobago self-government, the theme that you would see in all of those consultations were consensus and unity. Consensus and unity. So I dare say on behalf of my colleagues here this morning who are sharing this platform, that when we went into this Joint Select Committee, we were very enthusiastic about getting down to work. We felt that somehow we would be indulging, we would be engaging in work that would match, that would somehow bring some crystallization or realization to all of the work of those who came before us. And we were very, very enthusiastic, and we were patriotic in terms of how we went forward with our duties on this Joint Select Committee. So we felt that there ought to have been education and a need to make sure that everyone understood the structures that were being proffered to be put in place, the overall stability of the central government and the mutual accountability in all spheres in any model that we come up with, so that we must understand that the current best practice models of multi-level governance is something that people must appreciate fully before they sign off on any bill or on any report. And so we set about to do our work in a manner which we felt you would bring some harmony between, the discussions, and I will get more into that. The Tobagonians, the rights of Tobagonians is something that we held of paramount importance, and also we viewed the rights of Trinidadians and their voice to be heard on this whole issue equally important. And I want to say that to the people of Tobago, at every point in time, I know that on behalf of my colleagues and myself, I can say very, very, very clearly and without fear of contradiction, that we hold true to the desires and to the will and the wishes of the people of Tobago. The people of Tobago are very close to our hearts and to our political party, the United National Congress. That being said, the conditions of governing the dispensation of autonomy, the ideas of identity, historicity, pride, these are not abstract concepts that you can just refer to them in a thesis. These are issues that were the subject of sensitive and complex negotiations between stakeholders in the past and joint select committees in the past. And again, we were of the view that in this instant joint select committee, that we would have rivaled, that we would have somehow, outdone the work that was done before to bring crystallization to this movement that is Tobago self-governance. Now, it is our view that the stakeholders, and particularly people of Tobago, did not get a chance to fully express their views and ventilate many issues that they have been carrying with them for decades. And it was to this extent we found that the consultations were patronizing and a wholly deficient exercise. So I want to say that that was something that we have stated in our minority report. Now, when you're talking about consultations, the significant role of consultations in the business of lawmaking, you can get into law, and I'm not here to talk law this morning. What I would say is that in our report, and even in our deliberations there during the Joint Select Committee, we in our minority report made reference to something called the gunning principles, and I leave it at that. These are common law principles that have developed over a period of time, and really what these principles provide for is for proper consultation for people when they are treating, especially with legislative provisions. Two things that we pulled out of the gunning principles, which we felt did not translate in this Joint Select Committee's work, was that adequate time ought to have been given for consideration and response. And this is something that we felt strongly about, that people of Tobago did not have an adequate time to consider what was there and also to give their response. Also, the product of consultation must be conscientiously taken into account, and that is something that even the stakeholders who came forward to participate in the limited consultation, they were all of the view that at or about the beginning of June of this year, that they were not being treated properly. In fact, Mr. Ho Choi Charles of Tobago, One Tobago Voice, he himself said that he felt insulted by the committee. And these are really, I want to say, stinging words, and we should not treat with lightly. So what we had is that we felt that as a matter of law and as a matter of fact, that we really did not have proper consultation taking place. There's no doubt that the contents of the bills before the Joint Select Committee were complex, and that the divided opinions from legal experts on both sides, and even those who were commissioned by previous committees and this Joint Select Committee, we have no doubt that the divided opinions on both sides suggest that there was much to elucidate upon. And I want to just refer, we have put it in our minority report. For example, during the deliberations or during the inquiry stage of the Joint Select Committee, a letter dated 17th May 2021 from the President of the Law Association, she stated categorically, the unanimous view of our members at the meeting today was that these bills should be rejected forthwith. These bills should be rejected forthwith to effect the meaningful change that Tobagonians have been yearning and deserving to see. We also had comments coming from retired Justice Mr. Anthony Lucky when he stated as well, and I quote, "I have to end here to meet the deadline by quoting from previous comments. This bill seeks a compromise and as a result is a sort of masquerade of an independent state. The bill is a hodgepodge of autonomy, self-government, and an independent state that regrettably may end up in utter confusion." Close quote. That is from retired Justice Mr. Anthony Lucky. We also had comments coming, and we have stated in the minority report, the Tobago Civil Society Network, that the bills put forward by this Joint Select Committee would in fact deny Tobago the equality of status and the right to self-determination promised in the bills. So, citizens, I want to make it clear that these were comments that were coming in during the inquiry stage of the Joint Select Committee. Now, at a certain point in time, in the Joint Select Committee, members John and member Inder Singh, members of the committee along with myself, we felt that here it is that you had a committee, and we mean no disrespect to the other members of the committee, but we felt that the committee was going about its work in a manner which was somehow aloof of the people of Tobago. And therefore what we did was that we wrote a letter, and it is attached in the report that is laid before the Parliament, and that letter is dated 30th March 2021. And what we said in that letter was essentially the issue, and if I may just look at the letter, that the issue itself of consultation needed to be embarked upon immediately. So when we wrote that letter, the 30th of March, we felt that we were going along with the work of the committee, but we were not hearing the voices of Tobagonians, and that we felt needed to come on earlier rather than later. So that was the gist of our letter of the 30th of March, and what we have indicated is that having particularly regard to the elections that were held on 25th of January, that the Tobago voice, they were keen. There was a keen sense of knowing their rights and wanting to know how do they move further in terms of Tobago self-governance. And so what we said was that even further in our letter, we said that the deadline of May 2021, which was set as a possible deadline. Now remember, we did not write, we wrote our minority report at the end of the Joint Select Committee's proceedings. But it was not at the end that we chose to say all of these things. So as at the beginning of April, we made it clear by way of a letter that the May 2021 deadline for the reporting by this Joint Select Committee was an unreal target and betrays the lack of appreciation of the very complex nature of this present exercise. So we made it clear that the responsibilities to be assumed by the proposed Tobago Island government is not one that should be articulated and discussed at the level of the JSC without the immediate input of the people of both Trinidad and Tobago. So that was our position. And we indicated that that input of the people of both Tobago and Trinidad be by way of extensive consultations. I quote from the letter, "Given the current operations of the JSC, one can only surmise that the consultation exercise is one that will be undertaken at some unspecified time in the future, as has been discussed by this JSC. We wish to propose," and this we is of course Member John, Member Inder Singh and myself, "we wish to propose, however, that consultation be undertaken immediately. Failure so to do can see us deliberating in a circular fashion, and this Joint Select Committee suffering the same fate as previous incarnations, which delivered no substantial progress on the issues affecting Tobagonians. More importantly, these JSC discussions continue to progress without the basic courtesy and respect due to the people of Tobago, whose views must inform our discussions. So we were clearly of the view during the inquiry stage of this committee that the views of Tobago ought to inform every step of the way. And when that was not, in our humble opinion, not taking place, we put our letter on the record as at the beginning. The letter is dated 30th of March. So essentially the beginning of April, that we wanted to go to immediate consultation. So that is a letter that is on record. Now, what took place next was we did go to consultation, but before getting into the consultations itself, we must take note of the fact that there were 21 meetings of the JSC and just 2 days of virtual consultations. So citizens may recall that on the 28th of April, that there would have been, the Prime Minister had held a press conference, and this was the signaling on his part of the implementation of stricter lockdowns. In fact, one of the measures that I recall was that there would be a reduction in the amount of flights going from Trinidad to Tobago. I myself was carded to go to Tobago to participate in consultations, but that did not materialize because of, these new restrictions that were created at that time. I say this so that in the context of what we were asking for and the consultations that came to be, on the 30th of April, we did have a day of virtual consultations, and we heard from a select few Tobagonians. And they did put forward, presentations. And I want to say that we want to give full credence to all those who put forward their presentation at the virtual consultations. We heard from one Tobago voice, Mr. Ho Choi Charles. We heard from Mr. Farley Augustine and other members of the PDP. We also heard from members of the PNM arm of Tobago Affairs, and there were other persons, civic-minded citizens of, and particularly Tobago, that they put forward their views. Now, what is instrumental in all of this is that when we had the consultations, there was a clear understanding between the stakeholders and the committee that whatever views they put forward at the consultation, the virtual consultations, that it would be taken on board. Whatever was presented as a draft bill at that point in time, it would be refined to take those views into account, and that it would be presented yet again to the stakeholders and to the wider citizenry of Tobago and Trinidad for further consultations. I want to say this morning that that did not take place. That representation never materialized. And so what happened was that the people who felt that their voices would have been heard, and in a particular manner, they expected that the consultation would have gone on, and it did not. I want to say that I recall at the first virtual consultation, Mr. Ho Choi Charles indicating, and I use this as an example, he indicated that he would put forward some of his proposals, one Tobago voice, to the committee, and he would do that in writing. Others similarly gave that undertaking, and they did put forward their proposals. In the case of Mr. Ho Choi Charles, he put forward those proposals. We did not see that until very late, and I say very late. We saw that at the beginning of June, when the committee was of the collective view, and I say collective view very loosely, that it wanted to bring these proceedings to an end. Now, at that point in time, a second letter was written by Member John, Member Inder Singh, and myself, and I would like to just cite very quickly what we had indicated, that we could not feel assured that given the brief window of consultations, we have solicited sufficient views to say we understand what Tobagonians and Trinidadians are thinking on this subject. Tobagonians have been urged to speak their minds, as this is a valuable opportunity to have their voices heard. However, on Friday 30th April and May 1st, 2021, public consultations were held, and a mere 31 oral submissions were received. The online survey between 17th April to 4th May 2021 saw a low participation of 195 citizens, Now, I just stick a pin at this point in time because I know the Prime Minister himself has a peculiar aptitude for mathematics, and he has been going in the public domain indicating that 77% of Trinidadians somehow put forward their views. I don't know where he got those figures from, but as I said, 180,000, and you divide that by half, and then you add some, you do the sine and the costat and tangent and whatever you add to that, you will get 140,000. He has a very peculiar aptitude for mathematics. I ask, and this is in the letter, members here this morning, we put it on the record, could it truly be said that Tobagonians have spoken? When one considers that the population of Trinidad and Tobago is almost 1.4 million people, it is unacceptable, if not disturbing, that this committee is prepared to be satisfied with such meager consultations. That is on the record. Former THA Chief Secretary Ho Choi Charles has indicated that many of the issues that were painstakingly raised in the first bill did not find expression in the two subsequent bills before the committee. We are told that the previous bill enjoyed widespread consultation and extensive reviews of people from Tobago as well as Trinidad. And that is what the committee seemed to be laboring under. And we put it squarely, this appears to contrast with our present scenario and begs the question as to what exactly constitutes the subject matter of consultations. Are we talking at cross purposes with Tobago people? And of course, we said that we are all too aware, and you, the citizens, will appreciate that the timing of the public consultations unhappily coincided with public health measures, which meant that our usual style of town hall meetings could not be held. Failing this, however, the onus, in our view, was on the Joint Select Committee to encourage many more persons to communicate with us in other ways as listed, and we set out in our letter. There can be any number of reasons why participation was low, and we pointed this out to the committee, including possibly people not having access to electronic devices or proper connectivity or the opportunity to give feedback, if only because there are still some categories of people who remain shy of the technology. And we must not understand in this day and age when everything is virtual, that in households that actually have a device, that device, it may be singular, and so that it is being shared with students, children, as the case may be. So within households, there's a demand for the device that people may not have had the opportunity to access virtual consultation. We cannot deny that we are in unprecedented times, and we needed to ensure that we felt the pulse of the people. And in our letter, looking at the latest bout of health restrictions, one can understand that the population is not operating as per usual, and expectedly we may not have received robust response to consultations. However, given the extraordinary significance of these two bills before the committee, and given everyone's desire to finally get this Tobago self-governance issue right, we would like to sincerely appeal to the committee to keep the period of consultations open until such time that we are satisfied that we have felt the pulse of Tobago. That is for Tobago. We went further. We reiterated that Trinidadians should be included in any such exercise, as this is not an exercise in isolation. It must be a true collaboration of minds. So this was the position adopted by us members in the Joint Select Committee that led to our minority report. And I would like to say that we concluded that the consultation process was unfair, it was inopportunely timed, it failed to reach a significant number of people. The consultation process, it failed to genuinely consider the views of important stakeholders, including a veteran politician whose experience in this issue may very well be paralleled. I mean, sometimes I myself, when we have discussions, we would refer to Mr. Ho Choi Charles as Mr. Tobago himself. The work of this committee and the report that has been laid before the Parliament, and even the accompanying bills, it has not resolved contested legal opinions. It did not take the concerns of stakeholders seriously as it tried to contain the consultations to fit its own remit and time frame. And I want to say that when we had the last Joint Select Committee meeting on the 4th of June 2021, 4 political parties were invited. The minutes of that is attached to the report that has been laid before the Parliament. 3 of those political parties that attended, they said that they had only received the draft bills the night before, 8:06 p.m. the night before, and they got an email telling them that they were invited for a 3 p.m. meeting the next day. When they came to the meeting, these voices indicated, these are the leaders of political parties, the leaders of movements that have spoken traditionally in the past towards Tobago self-government. These persons were saying, we are seeing for the first time what you are producing as your final draft report, and we would like to report back to the committee in 2 weeks. Having regard to the fact that when they came to virtual consultations and they said they would produce written responses, and they did do so, there was no reason to distrust that on this occasion, when they said that they were seeing the final draft bills that is going to be laid and debated in the Parliament tomorrow, they indicated that they just simply need 2 weeks. And do you know what they asked for that 2 weeks for? Because they wanted the opportunity that, having regard to the very meager consultations that took place, they wanted to go and consult the people of Tobago and then report back in an informed manner on the bills that are there. So I don't see that request that was made of the political parties of Tobago, 3 out of the 4 that came at the last sitting of the Joint Select Committee, that it was unreasonable and there was no reason to deny that request. But we did make a recommendation. So in our report, I conclude as reading our recommendations. While the view of the work of this Joint Select Committee is important, we consider that it should have positioned itself to benefit from the wealth of information contained in the 2016 draft report, which better represents the will of the Tobagonians. We further recommend that widespread and more meaningful consultations be held to improve the deficit in this regard and in a wider time frame. We also recommend that the Joint Select Committee adjusts its own remit to be more inclusive of the concerns of the stakeholders and the citizens, not only in Tobago, but also in Trinidad. So as I conclude, citizens, ladies and gentlemen, and my colleagues here this morning, I want to just state, as I indicated before, and MP Inder Singh also said it when he gave his presentation, that the United National Congress fully supports Tobago's self-government movement, but we will not stand idly by to watch a PNM manipulation of the work that has gone into this in the past and what has now been a manipulation by this present committee, and the resultant product is what we see about to be debated tomorrow. The PNM, this present PNM regime, must not ignore the will of Tobagonian stakeholders and therefore what is their stake in Tobago self-government bills. The Tobago self-government consultations, I have indicated before, they were patronizing and deficient, and you cannot go about ignoring Tobagonians with decades of experience and commitment to Tobagonian self-government. I think I have taken a little bit too much of time this morning, so I want to conclude with those final words, and I want to say that we remain open to what it is the government presents tomorrow, but our position, as has been articulated in our minority report, was that we should have proper consultations, adequate consultations, and that we should really try to capture the will of the Tobagonians, and Trinidad has an equal stake in this. So I want to thank you all this morning for tuning in.
I want to thank you very much, and I want to thank my 2 colleagues who sat with me in the Joint Select Committee. I think this morning what they have done in terms of presenting the views of the UNC, representing the views of the people of Tobago, it was exemplary. It was well presented, they were very eloquent, and because we have studied the issues, they could have brought a report that I'm hoping will reach and touch the heart and minds of the citizens of Trinidad and Tobago, because Tobago business is Trinidad business and vice versa. So I want to really thank and congratulate my both the colleague MPs. Now, My job here, they have made it very simple in terms of just reiterating, and then we will have a short question and answer segment in the event that there are any questions. I'm seeing hands raised already, but if you'll just allow me, the Tobagonian on the panel, I will just have a few words to say. So I want to say thanks again to our viewing and listening public for tuning in to the Opposition Press Conference, which seeks to bring to the nation's attention matters we deem of urgent public importance. And nothing can be more important than what is affecting Tobago at this time, because this bill, the two bills that we have before us, these they emerged, or the embryonic stages, which was so very eloquently put by MP Inder Singh, that started in earnest when 44 years ago, in 1977 to be exact, to when the then member for Tobago East would have moved a motion in Parliament, and it was seconded by a very another illustrious Tobagonian. Although he represented at the time Tobago West, he's also a man from Tobago East. He's actually from my village in Tobago. He is a Charleville man, as I am proudly from Charlottesville. So what they did then, and MP Inder Singh did make the point that then the Member of Parliament for Tobago West said, we are calling not for secession, but for internal self-government. So just like my colleagues before me, I just want to make the point that when we attended the Joint Select Committee, we really had no set position. We had no prior discussions amongst ourselves, and we went with open hearts and minds, and particularly me as a Tobagonian, I had a keen interest and felt a sense of duty to be sitting where I was sitting at that point in time, because to me, a Tobagonian, the potential of these bills is to unlock opportunities and to access and to unlock and give access to opportunities which are long overdue for Tobago. Some might say just by virtue of having the privilege of citizenship, because I think in the preamble so amended, that is what the inference, just by privilege of having the gift of citizenship in Trinidad and Tobago is sufficient, and so it should be. But when you, as I am, from Charlottesville, or Speyside, or Dallas, as they call Dallaford, lands for me, Palo Tuvia, etc., your ambition doesn't burn any less bright. It is access to the full possibility of this gift of birthright that amendment of these laws hopefully will provide to every little boy and girl in Tobago, and even man and woman in Tobago. It is that possibility that has kept Tobagonians for 44 years. You know, there's a little hymn they sing in the Baptist church. For 44 years, down in the valley, and I never get weary yet. I never get weary yet. You understand? So Tobagonians have not gotten weary. 44 years. It's over 4 decades when Arthur Napoleon Robinson, Raymond Robinson, would have brought that first motion. And all of this time. Now, in 2016, then Chief Secretary, Mr. Orville London, in a press release from the Tobago House of Assembly, he said after they had come together, and they came together, that at the time it was representatives from the TOP, Mr. Ho Choi Charles, persons who were protagonists, in the politics of Tobago, opponents, fierce opponents. They came together as one voice and as Tobagonians. That was the spirit. And I think this morning, MP Rambley called it consensus. They came together in a spirit of consensus and unity. I, with a little management training, I call it in a spirit of esprit de corps. You understand? There was togetherness, and that was very remarkable. In 2016, so much so that Mr. Orville London in 2016 said, he believes Tobago is getting close to securing the self-government it has been seeking for 4 decades. In 2016, that was like his goodbye gift to Tobago, So they then went to the THA, the Assembly, and they had discussions, and they had a debate, and the bill was passed by it was passed unanimously in Tobago, right? And then it was sent down to Trinidad as the law prescribes that it should. And this was where is it? I have it here. Right, the Tobago House of Assembly Bill of 2016. And they were very proud of this piece of work. You know why? Because it was all of Tobago coming together, you understand, to produce this document. And they said, let us get it to Trinidad. And as I said, Mr. London said, I think that we are at a point where we can say the destination is close. The Chief Secretary said, London paid tribute to those who championed the cause of self-government, including A.P.T. James. That is going back a lot of years. You know, that is going back beyond the 40 years now. He had served on the Tobago's Legislative Council from 1946 to 1961. And Ian R. Robinson, London described Robinson as the grandfather of the movement, who he said in 1977 gave one of the best addresses ever in the history of the Parliament of Trinidad and Tobago when he stood and made a case for Tobago. So here is Mr. London. These are opponents in politics, and here he is playing homage, giving Mr. Robinson his just due. And we, just as MP Rambley said, we felt that we had to continue in that spirit, indeed, to get towards, to assist as best we could in having Tobago realize this, what has been elusive for 40 years of having self-determination. So, of course, we spoke about the consultations, which were held leading to that bill of 2016, and then further consultations, because I think in sending the draft, to the Prime Minister, Dr. Keith Rowley, in 2016, after Mr. London did that, after it was approved by the Tobago House of Assembly. Now, this attitude is far removed from what now obtains, because, you see, there's the Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago going to the Parliament tomorrow, and already he's saying he will not get the support of the opposition. And I don't know why he's of that view, because, again, as both colleagues have said, the United National Congress is fully supportive of Tobago gaining self-determination and its autonomy. So in 2018, a modified version of the bill, of the 2016 bill, was referred to a joint select committee. Now, what you will hear from Tobagonians is that this 2018 bill was far removed from what they had sent to Trinidad in 2016. And that went on, where we have two bills, as I said, they were vastly different. And my colleagues would have spoken about the inadequacy of the consultations with the various Tobago-based entities. And on Thursday the 3rd, just to reiterate, June 2021, another vastly different bill was again emailed. So if someone is asking, you all are saying 44 years, why do they need more time? Because each incarnation of the bill changes significantly. And we need to give Tobago the time. After all, they are the ones who will have to live with that bill. They will have to work with that bill, So therefore, they will need the time to assimilate the bill and to bring, again, their advice to bear on whatever is being promoted by Trinidad. So after waiting and working, I said in the vineyard, as we're going to see, for 40 years, it was chosen that not to return to the people of Tobago. And we end up with a report on two bills to be debated tomorrow, which largely ignore the wishes of the people of Tobago. And again, you would have heard from my two colleagues some of the issues, and I just want to briefly reiterate. All the political leaders and civil society leaders from Tobago have more or less rejected the bill. It's the PNM representative in Tobago who I suppose in agreement with the bill, but I must say, even at the level of the consultation, they were very strong in terms of, and there was cohesion with respect to what was seen as the issues which would have been more or less a deal breaker. You understand? Because Tobago has always been speaking literally with one voice on this issue of self-determination. So the group known that represented the civil society in Tobago, they have rejected the bill. The Progressive Democratic Patriots, the PDP among others, found that the bills did not sufficiently accord unto Tobago the equality of status. And that is another major issue. In the bill which came to Tobago of 2016, I just want to get to this very briefly. They are telling Clause 5 to amend Section 1 of the Constitution, inserting a new Section 1A, which states, there shall be equality of status between the island of Trinidad and the island of Tobago within the sovereign democratic state of Trinidad and Tobago, and the island of Tobago shall no longer carry the designation of a ward. I grew up reciting that Tobago is a ward of Trinidad, you know, and that really has not sat well with Tobagonians. And when they say, you see here, Tobagonians or Tobago would have defined what they saw as equality of status. What is now going to them is that the equality of status between the people of the island of Trinidad and the people of the island of Tobago. I mean, we know by virtue of your birthright there is equality. But Tobagonians are saying more. There must be equality of status between the island of Trinidad and the island of Tobago. Why are they saying that? They're talking about the self-determination, and then they're talking about the definition of the borders. You know, there need to be definition of the borders. Now, in the THA Act of 1986, it defines the boundaries as a 6-mile radius, etc. 96, sorry, right? 1996, okay. As a 6-mile radius. I'm simplifying now. In this, with all of the representations, now, Tobagonians had said, we want a 12-mile radius, but we wanted legislative control. So we know what we are responsible for. We want to have to know a definition of the resources. What are we contributing to the national GDP of the country, to the national pie? Because for so long, we have been known as a ward, as a dependent, you know, and that really does not sit well in Tobago. So within the context of self-determination, you know, Tobagonians are asking, give us our boundaries, you know, even if, and then we can do, they're asking for a Bill of Rights, or we can do a memorandum of understanding, etc. They are not saying, give us our share of what it is. It's okay, we understand if you use a fair equation to decide on the resources which will come to Tobago, but certainly we want to know, based on the urgency, on our urge on this need, on this burning desire for self-determination, we want to know what proportion of resources that Tobago contributes to the national treasury. And the only way we can know that is if we have a clear view, a clear insights into what the boundaries are. Well, of course, that did not come into this. Well, what they got, actually, it was 11 square miles, but without any definition, and it's administrative control and management, not legislative, as Tobago had been asking for. So I think that is really the sticking point in all of it, because from that everything else flows. What the legislator will look for, whether it's unicameral or bicameral, all of that, Tobago they have a view on these things. How it is resources will be proportion, because I think right now it's what is 4.6 or 4.03, which really came out of some negotiation with the Dispute Resolution Commission report. And basically, it is now what is being proposed is that Tobago should receive 6.8%. But if you are now getting, say, 4.6, you really are only getting 2.2% more, because the 4.6 represents your recurrent expenditure, I believe, and then is it that the 2.2 will represent your development budget? But if it is, Tobago is to be given some more public service responsibility. How does the 4.6 equate that? So these are matters for which we need a little more consultation, so that Tobago, can speak, and Tobago can, at least be aware of what is being prepared for them. So interestingly, Mr. Farley Augustine, the leader of the PDP team, did not go so far as to say reject the bill, but he was clearly saying the bills are incomplete, and of course my colleagues would have gone into great length as to the dissent. Now again, I make the point that one might say, might take the view that it is only persons opposed to the PNM, as it were. But that is not true. You know, we would have seen where in 2016 that they all came together, you know, as one and spoke with one voice. And I was looking at a television program, I think on the 25th of June or so, and I saw Dr. Faith Israel, where she said that confidentially they had sent letters to all of the political parties in Tobago and those representing civil society, asking for the same framework that they will all speak as one Tobago voice, again, in this time. You understand that they ought not to be fragmented.
9th of June.
On the 9th of June. 9th of June, right? Okay, fine. So, without Billy. Now, again, with respect to what is being said about the UNC, in 2013, the UNC offered the Tobago House of Assembly 8%, by the way, of the national budget, separate from Trinidad, as well as the unprecedented guarantee of 8% of the Heritage and Stabilization Fund. Right, today they are being offered 6.8%. The UNC had offered legislative authority over 11 miles of maritime space, gave full control of critical areas for Tobago to realize its socio-economic goals like town and country planning. In 2013, again, that bill, the UNC proposed giving to Tobago the right to make laws for town and country planning, all state land, marine parks, because, you know, under the new piece of legislation being proposed, the governing interest in Tobago decide that they want to maximize Tobago's blue economy, they will have to come back to a Trinidad cabinet to say yes or no, right? So you know what we are doing really and truly a little bit mixed up or more than that. So Tobago has asked for a little more time, and they were clear. They were not asking for forever, but after waiting for 44 years, time really, you know, we are not saying wait forever with this thing. We are saying just they were very specific. They say give us 2 weeks, you know, so we can go to the people, because we don't believe that they have been consulted, right? So in Tobago there is still a push for cohesion on the various issues. We in the UNC feel that fierce urgency of now, and it is reason we have come to you to bring our point of view and to reiterate that we do support Tobago's self-determination and autonomy. So we say, if not now, if we can't do it now, well, when? You know, now we have a Tobago-born prime minister sitting in the seat of power, you know, and this is an opportunity. So it is not too much in light of the 40+ years that have gone in pursuit of this objective. It took us 40 years to get here. I am hoping it does not take us another 40 years to get a good bill passed. Tobago is not saying we want everything that we asked for. They are saying that we want reasonableness, right? 40 years of so much potential perhaps lost, 40 years of just waiting and hoping. So today the UNC reaffirms its commitment in ensuring autonomy and internal self-government for Tobago. Ladies and gentlemen, the listening public, my colleagues at the head table, I thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you very much, Deputy Political Leader of the United National Congress and Senator in the Upper House of Trinidad and Tobago, for providing her perspective on where we are at in terms of the Joint Select Committee's report on Tobago's internal self-government, or the Constitutional Amendment Bill 2020, and to my colleague, the Member of Parliament for Chaguanas West, for his perspective also in terms of the issues that led to the compilation of the minority report. I want to take the opportunity this morning, before we invite questions from the media. I think it was a slip of my tongue when I referred to Assemblyman Farley Augustine as, I think, Farley Davidson. So my sincere apologies. It was a slip of my tongue, and I want to set the record straight in terms of my pronunciation and familiarity with Assemblyman Farley Augustine's name, and also his position as the Deputy Political Leader within the Patriotic Democratic Party of Tobago. So, members of the media, we stand ready to take your questions.
All right. Hello, good morning.
Good morning.
Yes, good morning. Are you hearing me?
Very clearly.
Yes, good morning. Clayton Clark from Radio Tambrin in Tobago. Questions. My first question, the UNC has stated again today that the party is in support of internal self-government for Tobago. However, given the history of the UNC and the PNM parties not supporting each other with regards to passing bills and motions in the parliament, many Tobagonians may have little faith that the UNC may in fact support any PNM motion, no matter how important it is or significant to Trinidad and Tobago. Can you give assurance, any assurance that things will be different when it comes to voting for the motion tomorrow, notwithstanding the concerns you have raised? And will you be pushing for a further 2 weeks for additional consultation?
Well, the issue of a 2 weeks consultation at the time was clearly rejected by the majority of members on the committee from a government's point of view. And that is what led to the compilation or the basis of the minority report. The UNC has made it very clear that we cannot impose our will on the people of Tobago, that there is the need for consultation to go back to the stakeholders. We need to listen very attentively to the stakeholders who came before the committee, the political parties, the leaders. They said that they wanted time to go back and consult with the persons under their charge and also the wider constituency of Tobago. And in addition to that, we pushed for the issue of consultation also in Trinidad and Tobago, because there have been submissions to the 2018 bill prior from stakeholders in Trinidad, and as has been clearly articulated by my two colleagues, that this particular report and legislation, the two proposed bills, affects the relationship between Trinidad and Tobago, Tobago and Trinidad, vice versa. And in that context, after listening to the views of the people, of course, from a Tobago's point of view, from a Trinidad point of view, I think that we will have a consolidated position and continue to support the right of self-determination and autonomy.
A second question, right, what changes, if any, do you want to see in the bills before you can give support? Any particulars you have identified?
Right. If
you mean in the party?
Yeah, if I may respond to this, just as a follow-up to what Member Inder Singh has already answered, but the question seems to suggest, your question seems to suggest that if the UNC does not support the bill tomorrow, that it is not committed to Tobago self-governance, and that is not true. What we are saying, and this is why we have written a minority report, that if the report that has been laid before the Parliament is completely out of touch with the views of Tobagonians, and it has not even sought proper consultation with Tobagonians, and it has not sought consultation with Trinidad, the question is really, this product is a product of whom, and a product of what, and who is it meant to apply to? So the UNC's position is that you have to get the pulse of Tobagonians. That's number one. Number two, you are asking about specific clauses. We could debate all of the clauses that have been put forward as to what our views are. At this point in time, I would think that it is not material from the point of view that we are saying that we must first hear Tobagonians speak. And if I may just point out that, I have seen a lot of these articles over the last few weeks, not days, weeks. But today itself, we have an article like this, and look at it, Reflections on the Tobago Bills Part 1, I Love Tobago. And they have that picture there, and this is nice, and it is very well articulated. Here it is, you have commentators, Dr. Winford James and Dr. Varnus James. They have said it. When you look at this, they have made it clear citing purpose of the constitutional amendments, core principles, equality of status, etc., self-determination and fundamental rights. They have put all of these rubric headings. And one of the things that you will see, it is very clearly stated, all of these considerations, I'm quoting what they had to say, all of these considerations reflect what have been learned from discussions with the people of Tobago. And this is what they had to say about discussions. Discussions that were denied by the inadequate consultation procedures adopted by those who drafted the bills before the House. So it's not UNC saying that alone. The people of Tobago are saying that. The political leaders of the various parties and One Tobago Voice and all of them, they are all saying this, that they wanted proper consultation, and part of that was that they wanted to have more time with the bills. So I think to answer your question, the position of the UNC really is that we must have consultation properly undertaken. You hear the people of Tobago and you will be in a position to reconcile now what really, can obtain, between the two islands. But we are definitely committed. I think Member John, Senator John indicated very clearly, and Member of Parliament Rudy Indersing, that we are wholeheartedly committed to ensuring that there is Tobago self-governance, but it has to be crafted utilizing the will of the people of Tobago, and I would think that you must have also consultation with Trinidad as well.
Hello, good morning. Priya Bihari, EZPnews.com. I just wanted to find out, this matter was raised by Mr. Robinson, 1977. Ms. John, you were also in the cabinet of the UNC about 20 years ago. Mr. Endar Singh was also a part of the government UNC between 2010 to 2011, and nothing seems to be going on. And you must agree that Tobagonians must feel some sense of neglect. What now you think would be different? Are you going to convince them that something would be done in this matter? What would you say to them in this issue? Thank you.
Grateful that you think we have all that power, but the UNC is not the government. You understand? All that UNC is, what UNC is saying, because the bills before the Parliament, one, the Constitutional Amendment Bill requires a 3/4 majority in the lower house and a 2/3 majority in the upper house. So it means it requires the opposition support. And what we are saying is, we want Tobago to have its autonomy. So that is what we can say, and these are the things we can do. What we are doing here is what we can do, right? We can come and we can flag certain things, and we can indicate to the national population that we still stand ready and available, right? Or the political leader and will lead the 18 other MPs into the Parliament tomorrow, just as the Prime Minister will have his 21, but they are not enough. And because of it, that's the reason I took the time to read out and to reference the spirit of cooperation, as had indicated by MP Ramberley. I called it esprit de corps, right? That is where people work together. What they have to do is to work together. You understand? You cannot have worked for 44 years, right? When the Honorable Mr. Orville London will say, I think we are at a point where we can say the destination is close, but it's so close, but yet so far. That is not a UNC issue. You understand? We are not in the position. We are not there presenting that report tomorrow. The government is doing that, and we are saying that the UNC remains with an open mind, willing to listen and to support the views and the will of the Tobago people.
Yeah, two more.
Yes, good morning again. Right, at one of your party's press conference a couple of weeks ago, the MP4 appointed peer, Dr. David Lee, raised eyebrows in Tobago when he questioned the government's decision to allocate a particular amount of funding for the day-to-day running of the two recently purchased fast ferries. Dr. Lee said that monies could have been used for more essential matters, namely providing grants for persons affected by the coronavirus. What is any comments on that? Was your party take on the, how Tobagonians may be reacting to that view from someone in a position in the party?
MP Lee, perhaps look at the sum. I think I recall something like, is it 23 million? Was it per month or per annum? I'm not sure, but I think I heard that 23 million figure somewhere.
23 million per month. Yeah.
Per month. And, well, I mean, it sounds very exorbitant. And because I think the government is given to a lack of transparency, that is their preferred business model. I think without the figures, without any transparency or information, maybe there is where MP Lee was coming from. But certainly, if there is a vessel traveling between Trinidad and Tobago, I've always said those boats that travel between Trinidad and Tobago is not a love boat, Those boats are boats of economics. They are boats of hope. They are the lifeline of Tobago. I understand it. I used to come to Trinidad with my grandmother on Scarlet Ibis and Bird of Paradise. Maybe I'm dating myself. And them boats always breaking down. But these, I'm hoping that with the kind of money is being allocated or the money is being announced for maintenance, that these boats will serve Tobago well. I understand the reason for that what we call it, the island, the sea bridge. You understand, as a Tobagonian. All right. So I believe, as MP Lee was probably looking at the quantum, which sounds exorbitant. It's just, what is the breakdown? What is behind those figures? Perhaps that is what he meant to query.
Yeah, and I think just to support what DPL John has said, that I think that he focused that these are new boats that came for the maintenance or the efficient running of the sea bridge, and why this monthly cost to run 2 new boats when compared to the other boats in the past, it did not incur this monthly sum in terms of between the sea bridge and so on.
But maybe it's 2 different assets. What we could probably look at, we could probably maybe ask, I don't know, whether is that the peak. It probably wouldn't start at 23. It probably will start low, and they probably just announced the most outsized possibility, in doing their what-if scenario analysis. So that I think he was just querying that figure. I think MP Ndarising is right. It's quite a lot for brand new boats. But I'm not against maintenance. I understand plant and equipment, they need to be maintained from day one. They need a robust maintenance program. Sometimes people take the view that if something is new, why are we maintaining it? But no, we have to maintain it from day one, and particularly a boat going to and fro for Tobago. I'm biased in that regard. Not for the money, but in terms of having the boats. So I don't know if that satisfies you, that he did not mean to be disparaging in any way of Tobago. That's impossible. All right? He's just querying the sum and what the sum was made up of. Yes.
I want to take Mr. Ndarising and Mr. Rambali maybe to the press conference yesterday, Prime Minister, where he opened up on July 5th, he's going to open up only state construction, government constructions. I don't know if there are any thoughts on that. Do you agree with that aspect, or do you agree that maybe all of construction should have been opened up? Thank you.
The Prime Minister, again, is operating in a very haphazard manner. It shows that his government does not have a focused plan as it relates to the opening up of the economy. He seems to be toing and froing, and I don't know where he's getting the advice, because if you are opening up the construction sector from the point of view of the state, why not in the private sector in terms of stimulating the economy? Because what we saw outside of South Park in terms of the long lines, and it is a reflection of how the lockdowns are impacting upon the ordinary man, the persons who are existing on what we would call weekly and fortnightly salaries and so on. It is not people who are greedy, and I think that the Minister of Social Development and Family Services, Donna Cox, was totally out of place, totally out of line. Again, it reflects a lack of empathy with the ordinary people of Trinidad and Tobago. And as my colleague Vandana Mohit, the Member of Parliament for Shagwan Aziz, issued via media release, Minister Cox should be made to resign for her lack of understanding where we are at in terms of hard times, financial times. And I want to say to the Prime Minister that he should be focusing on getting the vaccines into Trinidad, continuing with a mass vaccination drive in terms of all workers on the front line in the construction sector, in the catering sector, in the restaurant sectors, in the agricultural sector and so on, so that the workers, the workforce, can all play a role in reviving the economic fortunes of Trinidad and Tobago, and not to chastise people who are indeed looking for some kind of social support. Because if the government is not rolling out their salary relief grants, their income support grants, they have given only 50 food cards to members of parliament, and the private sector is offering an avenue of hope, people indeed will reach out to what is being offered by the private sector. And they are not greedy. It is reflective of the times that we are living in relation to what Prime Minister Dr. Keith Rowley and his cabinet has led Trinidad and Tobago to.
MP Anderson, if you just permit me, I think one has to look at this thing, Senator John, as well. Members of the media, I think it is incumbent when statements like this are made that people are lining up because they are greedy. You really think, and this is a question that should be put squarely to the minister, you really think that people would line up for miles in that hot sun, not knowing what timing they will actually arrive at the point where they can collect a hamper, a food hamper, because of greed? These people are desperate, and they are therefore they're waiting in line for any form, any means of respite, any form of food, water, whatever it is being handed out. So I concur with MP Anderson, but the media should really take this kind of comment to task, because people will not do something like that. You're really insulting members of the population, and more so the most vulnerable.
So if there are no further questions here this morning, we again want to thank members of the public for viewing, members of the media for joining us, and we want to reiterate that Prime Minister Dr. Keith Rowley, in his approach to Tobago's self-government and autonomy, has emerged to be the Judas of all Judases. He's kissing Tobago while backstabbing them, and he's attempting to bully the people of Tobago into accepting his model of governance. Thank you very much.